Hello and welcome to the Grid Irn-Cru, an American football podcast made in Scotland by NFL lovers. This episode of the Grid Irn-Cru Special Cru is the third in a series of episodes in which myself and Gav speak to people from all around the world of American football. Today we have a very special guest, fresh from an epic shift covering the NFL yesterday. It's Team GB flag captain, NFL flag football ambassador, and everyone's favourite Sky Sports NFL analyst. It's Phoebe Schecter. Welcome, Phoebe. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I know we've been trying to get this done for a while now, so I do really appreciate you being so patient with me.
No, we appreciate you're a very busy woman, so we're patient people as well. We'd just love to get you on and chat some ball, so we could have waited a while. Don't worry about that. Thank you to you for making the time for us, because like I said, you're a very busy woman. You've got a lot going on, especially with NFL stuff, so we do really appreciate that.
No, it's great.
Before we get into chatting about, what's that, Gav?
I think anyone that follows Izzy follows Phoebe on Instagram, you'll see just how busy things are. There's 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. updates and late night radio shows. So yeah.
Gav, before we came on, Gav, Phoebe was saying she didn't go home till 5 a.m. this morning. So
I'm a glutton for punishment.
all for the love of this sport.
Exactly. I think that's what we're all doing, right? Ultimately trying to find ways to grow the game, bring attention to the UK and all the great people that are here.
Yeah. Before we get into the actual football chat, Phoebe, obviously most people will see you on social media, that an epic trip around the US last week. How was that?
It was really good. So obviously we worked Sunday. I flew out Monday to Philadelphia, where I did a keynote speech for a company all about like female empowerment. So it was really cool. It's like a great little branch that they've created called She Leads. Then I flew from Philly to Atlanta that night. And then on the Wednesday did a conference with RCX, who basically runs NFL flag. So we did that for a National Parks and Recs conference. And then right after that, I flew to Seattle, where I work with MVP or touchdown trips. And we had a group of like 4 great people. And you basically, we went to the game together. So I get to like talk to them during the game, break down what's happening. They're huge Seattle Seahawks fans. You see the stadium, you get to do all this really cool stuff. I mean, I'd never been to Seattle before, and Seattle is such a cool city. Like, food is delicious. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't the result, I would say. Thursday night football last week, 49ers, Seahawks, wasn't quite the result I think they wanted, but nonetheless, it was a very cool place to be.
Perfect. And so that's your first trip to Seattle. How was Lumen Field? Was the experience of it?
Lumen Field is amazing. And we did a Lumen Field tour as well. Just the way that it's built, like, because there's a lot of earthquakes, for example, all the way. They like built the stadium so it's in 8 different parts, so that actually if there's an earthquake, one part is never really attached. There's always like room for movement. But they were saying that Ed Sheeran played there this past summer, and actually because there's a lot of earthquakes there, they've constantly got it monitored, that the university, I think it's University of Washington, were like ringing them saying that they've got this like whatever level earthquake occurring, but it was because of the Ed Sheeran concert.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing about Lumen Field in particular is the acoustics there, isn't it? Because I remember, and I think it was getting a lot of replays in the lead up to Thursday Night Football. They were talking about the Beastquake game, Marshawn Lynch from 2010, 2011. How that was registering on all the alarm bells. It just shows that actually it's great that the stadium's designed that way, but it's almost kind of set up to trigger alerts as well. Fantastic setup. One thing that I maybe just want to follow up on, Phoebe's, again, anyone who follows on socials, as you mentioned the food aspect. So we know that Feed Phoebe is a big thing for you. So what were the culinary highlights of your Seattle trip?
Honestly, it was amazing. We went to Pike Place Market, which is, I mean, people know because of Starbucks originating there, but actually, like, we did a literal food tour. I haven't put any of that stuff out yet, but I had everything. I had everything from like muffins to the most amazing chocolate chip cookies I've ever had. Clam chowder. I didn't know that actually Seattle is like number 1 compared. So Rhode Island is where like New England clam chowder comes from, on the opposite side. And they actually invited Seattle out to come compete in their clam chowder, and they've been winning it for the past decade. So their clam chowder was unbelievable. We had pizza. We had truffle salt and truffle like lemons. It was like a lemon, I don't even know, but it was everything was delicious. I have never seen so much food everywhere, and like just a really cool opportunity to see all these like little wiggly spots all the way in the back of nowhere, and donuts. I mean, who doesn't want a donut?
And did you get to the famous fish market while you were there?
Yeah, so you go to the fish market and they literally just throw fish to each other. So it's such a weird situation where, and they're really good because it's kind of like a call and repeat. So they all start kind of, one person will say, all right, Gab's ordered this fish, and then they all kind of say it together in unison, and then they throw the fish across the fish market, and it's like, what is happening right now? And I saw monkfish for the first time. I don't know if you guys have seen what a monkfish looks like. I would highly recommend you look it up because it is the weirdest looking fish I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's not something. It doesn't look like something you'd want to eat, is it?
No, and it's really good, and I feel really bad for saying that, but it's hideous.
Excellent. I remember there used to be a motivational video that, going back to my early days of being in sales and stuff like that, was a video filmed in Seattle Fish Market. It was like kind of motivational video about being motivated and stuff like that. And it was just literally them just throwing the fish about all day. It was hilarious to watch. Excellent. That was great to hear about that, Phoebe. So most people will likely know you as Phoebe from Sky or from playing the game. So what we like to do in these kind of chats is give people a bit of an insight into your backstory and how you got into the game, and kind of just a wee bit about you for people that don't know you. So growing up, I read you were into horse riding a lot. Obviously, that's something you carried on. And football wasn't on your radar growing up. But when you were growing up in Connecticut, what other kind of sports? Did you play any sports? Were you into any other sports growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're born in the States, you kind of are given like any piece of sporting equipment essentially, and they're like, go. So I played on a boys basketball team for ages. I did cross country, softball. My main sport was lacrosse, so that was kind of the big one for me. I did I don't even know what I did anymore. I did so many different things, but like horses and lacrosse, those were pretty much the main things that I did. But I think ultimately, like most of who I am is definitely based around like horses and the way that kind of brought me up.
Yeah, I mean, playing lacrosse from an early age, you obviously liked the physical sport very early.
Yeah, I mean, I just loved being active, right? Like I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be rolling around in the dirt. Like I didn't want to do girly things or whatever that means. Like, and because of where I was living, like I was living with two boys and they rode dirt bikes, and you know, their dad worked on roofs. And so I was like, cool, I'm going to do that. I want to do everything that the boys can do. Like, I never felt like I couldn't do that. So it was really cool to be able to have that, that sort of like upbringing.
Perfect. I think from my perspective, Phoebe, I think that's one of the things that's really interesting is, I mean, you've already said you weren't involved in football at an early age. And I guess my question following up on that maybe be why not football? Was it not available to you, or just something that wasn't of interest at a young age?
Yeah, I mean, like my mom is not sporty at all. She is very open about that. And so I didn't really, I think also like when you work with horses, or like horses were so much, I was obsessed, right? And that is 24/7. I mean, I didn't really watch TV. I didn't really like, that was just not my life. I'd rather be outside with my little pony all day long as opposed to sitting inside or watching anything like that. And so I think I'm just a product of my environment ultimately.
So at that time, 7 hours of commercial-free football wasn't your idea of heaven.
No. I mean, I probably watched maybe 2 Super Bowls in my life before moving over to the UK. And that's probably because someone had a Super Bowl party on and I was like, perfect food.
After yesterday, you've been wishing it was only 7 hours you'd worked, Phoebe.
Yeah, yesterday, I think yesterday might have just pushed me over the edge a little bit. I don't know if that was the the right decision by me in hindsight, but actually it was great to work with Greg Rosenthal and the team over there, and it was the right move to do. But today did not feel like I'm alive yet. So I'm very sorry to everyone.
So obviously, you, as you mentioned, you had a massive love at horses, and you obviously then done your equine business management. That's kind of what you went to university and done, and that kind of led you to the UK in 2012. So talk us through your decision to move to the UK.
Yeah, it was less of a decision and more of a, well, you've been hired, so figure it out. And I was like, oh gosh. So I had interviewed with a gentleman on the Dutch Olympic team, And this was January of 2012. So London 2012 Olympics coming off that summer. And really, I was just kind of doing my gran a favor. I thought it was the right thing to do. She's actually Scottish. So, yeah, so she's from Motherwell area. So she was very adamant that I take advantage of having dual citizenship. So my mom's British. And my siblings don't have dual passports. They didn't get them. So just I did. And then, so yeah, interviewed with him. He kind of just said, figure it out, you're hired. And I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be real life now. I'm going to have to do this. But I had told him I couldn't move over till the following December because I had a great job in the States. I had to give notice. And the following December, I moved over to the UK.
I think, I guess it's maybe something we'll circle back on later when we talk about women's flag specifically. But I guess Motherwell's quite interesting because, of course, the women's championships are being played at Ravenscraig near Motherwell in March next year. So it's almost a homecoming opportunity for you.
Yes, absolutely. My grandma would love that I would tell her all about that and what it looks like, nowadays. And, Ravenscraig's brilliant. I wish it wasn't so far from me, but it is a terrific facility. And it's just so nice to have somewhere that's an indoor space. It's huge in there. Cafe, whatever you need, it's like all right there.
It's quite for Ravenscraig is just a couple of miles down the road from where me and Gav played our first flag football game as well. It was just there used to be a kind of really old ash red pitch that we played our first ever flag football game on just up the road from Ravenscraig actually before it became what it is there. So that'd be great to get up to that for a kind of homecoming for you.
That's incredible.
So as we've discussed, you weren't really into football until you came to the UK. In 2013, you answered the kind of trial for Manchester. And as I say, the rest is history. But what was your first impressions of playing the sport when you first got into it?
Yeah, I remember that first trial so well. And it's really cool because, I really just went because I wanted to meet people. It was my one day off a week. So I was working 6 days a week with horses. And so it was great to, some of them I still am really close with today. One of them is like my best friend. And it's great that we just started that relationship, all of that almost 12 years ago. And, I think that's what sport is. And I think that's what sport in this country specifically is, where it's so much about community. But when I started, I think my coaches at the time, they were like, you've got an American accent. You must be able to throw the ball. I definitely could not throw the ball, but we did it anyways. Lots of handoffs. So yeah, just kind of really loved playing. Didn't really know what I was doing as a quarterback specifically. But it was, I don't know. It just like changed my life and I just fell in love with it so much. And that was the time in the country that we were building out the GB women's program. So Jim Messenger at the time, myself, Beverly Marwood, that's really where we started to like, what is this program, and built it to be able to play our first international. We were playing 5-a-side contact back then. So our first international in October in Hertfordshire against Sweden. And that was just kind of like the start of this incredible journey.
Yeah, so obviously you mentioned there you played for GB for Kitty Derby on to the European Championships 2015, 2019, and then you won the silver in 2022. Was that kind of the highlight of your flag career, getting that silver?
Yeah, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think winning like at the World Championships in Finland when we won silver in kitted, like that was the most incredible thing for us, or like the biggest obstacle, I guess, for us to overcome. I'd say if I rewind a little bit, probably one of the most fulfilling ones is the 2015 European Championships, where we won silver in that. I actually can't remember. Bronze. I don't really actually remember at the top of the head.
That's all matters.
Potato. But we that was really incredible for us because we were a team that had played maybe 2 11-a-side games ever before that game, and we were playing Finland in the final, and they killed us. Like it was 50 to I don't even know what number, but we had beaten Germany at the time. We'd beaten this huge powerhouse. We'd beaten Sweden. We'd done all these really incredible things. And so that was like a huge, just momentum shifter for us. And we were so proud. And I remember celebrating in Spain, and all the other teams were like so excited for us. it was like this huge celebration of all of us together. And then to go from that to then winning silver at Worlds, that was like gigantic because we beat Canada. And I think we're saying, hey, we can actually compete on this stage. I would ultimately even say the first half of the USA game that we played in the final, we were tied 14-14 at the half. And so that is like the biggest, I think, compliment to our program and compliment to ourselves that we were able to even stay in that race with USA until halftime. So yeah, lots of great things to build on.
Yeah. And then at what point in during your career of playing the football did you start getting into flag then?
So this was kind of a funny one. I had weirdly, I guess I just had applied for some sort of like jersey giveaway online that Nuola was doing. And this would have been back in, I want to say like 2013 maybe, or 2012 even. And I'd applied and, entered and won this jersey through Nuola. And they were like, hey, well, and this is like Rudy at the time, which just said, hey, do you want to we're going to do a photo shoot for all of our jersey winners. I think there were like 5 of us. And so I went to Sheffield. We had this great day together. It was super fun. And he was like, do you want to play for Sheffield Vipers? And so I thought, okay, cool. Let's see what happens. I'd never played flag really. So started playing for Sheffield Vipers and would drive across to Sheffield all the time. Then I was also playing tackle for Birmingham Lions as my domestic team. And we decided to start a women's flag team. So we did that, which is super cool now because, that would have been probably 2013 as well, 2014. And now in 2024, we're starting a Lions flag team again. So it's pretty cool to see like where things go. And it's all quite cyclical ultimately.
Yeah, no, obviously the flag career kind of developed over the last 10 years. And obviously we went to Ireland last year and won the Euros. You beat Spain in the final there again. How was that experience?
Yeah, that was pretty incredible. Like I feel like my journey with flag has been tumultuous at times, right? Where, I haven't made the team. I've, been on silvers or whatever. It's, and so I've had this really funny relationship with GB flag over the years where I'm like, I know I'm so much better. I know I can prove myself. And so just being kind of tenacious and chasing it to then, get to the final in Ireland and, be able to, first off, our team has gone so much stronger. We bring in a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback. Brittany's unbelievable. She is dynamic. She is a competitor. And so then to kind of score the winning touchdown in that game was really quite special. And I think just we couldn't have done it any other way. Like we just had to like play with so much emotion there.
Yeah, no, it's great to see. We're going to come back. We'll circle back to the 2024 World shortly, but we just winning that European Championship. And obviously, as you now get 3 medals playing this sport, so much more than any else can ever dream for.
I guess maybe just one other thing I'd want to slip in just while we're kind of talking about what brought Phoebe to today is Kabaddi, because interestingly enough, that was it wasn't Sky Sports and it wasn't really even flag that brought me to your attention, but I was playing with Glasgow Hornets at the time, and we'd started to bring a lot of the women's players in from East Kilbride, and they were all talking about Phoebe. It's like Phoebe's trying to put together this Kabaddi team, and I think actually the Scottish team was put together to compete with your side. So I guess maybe just what kind of led you into that? Was just another new challenge?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I moved to the UK and it was like, I just want challenges all the time. I think, and I know I say it all the time, but I do think when you're out of your comfort zone, you're so much more willing to take risks. Like I wasn't afraid to fail when I moved here. I never would have done any of this stuff before moving here. So I feel like I contribute so much of who I am to literally making that decision. And ultimately we're all just a series of our life choices, right? Like I'm no different to anybody else. It's just, what are the decisions that we're making? And so when it came to Kabaddi, it was a girl that was actually over from New Zealand playing for Manchester Titans. And she had played Kabaddi in New Zealand. And we had played against each other. And she was like, look, I love the way you play. I think that you would love this sport. You should really come try it out. And so I went to my first ever kabaddi trials, I guess you would call it. And it was at this like Sikh house in Hinckley. And it was, you get there, you take off your shoes, you play on the grass. There were like gypsy horses over in the corner. I mean, there was maybe 6 of us. Again, like I've met my best friend from that one day playing kabaddi. Like we're still best friends to this day. And after you play, you go inside the house and the women have made you all this yummy food and you sit on the floor with your metal tray and they give you your food. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this sport is amazing. Like I loved everything about it. And really it gave me so many incredible sporting opportunities and brought me to so many places in the world that I never thought I would go to. India being the biggest one. I've been, multiple times. We had our Kabaddi World Cup out in India and it was like a roaming tour. So you were in a different city every game day and it gave you like a real taste of that city you were in. So whether it was the young children playing flutes with your entrance kind of ceremony, or the Bangalore dancers, or when you play barefoot and it's about the spirit of the warrior, like everything really spoke to me. And it's probably one of the most amazing sports I've ever been a part of and ever played.
Yeah, it seems like very much like a cultural experience as well as a sport.
Hugely. I mean, we were out in India for weeks at a time, and so it's for me. I love the culture. I love I love that cows are sacred and they roam the streets, and it's about us protecting them. And you get to. I think for me, sport is just a snapshot of the world ultimately, right? Where you're participating, you're working with people that you may not normally work with, but you find ways to communicate and get the job done. And so I think for us to come together and to go out to India, and again, we made it to the finals and, lost to India in the finals, but we went to a Sikh community, a Sikh school there, learn about their cultures and shared ideas, just food, like, being a part of that. Like even from day one, the trays, don't leave anything on your tray. If you take something, you eat it all. You don't ever leave anything. So there's just some like really nice pieces. And again, the fact that kabaddi is like the spirit of the warrior, there's still some of those lessons within the sport. So like you're not supposed to drink water during the game because warriors they don't need that. I mean, I need that, but they don't need that. Or you're supposed to say kabaddi. Like that's where when you're playing, you're supposed to be like kabaddi, but it's to prove that you have the mental capacity, the lung capacity, the physical capacity to be able to focus, make tactical decisions whilst also, controlling your body. So there's just some really cool elements of it.
Yeah, I mean, I stumbled across it a couple of years ago. Sky Sports did cover it for a wee while. I don't think they still do. And I stumbled across it. I mean, and I'm going to do a massive disservice here, but growing up in Glasgow, to me, it was like a big giant game of competitive TIG. That's what it looked like to me. And I was like, I love this. I'm loving watching this. Obviously, that's now doing a bit of disservice, but to me, that's what it reminded me of, like playing as kids. I thought that looks such a fun sport to play.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit like British Bulldog, and there's 2 different versions. So there's circular and there's rectangular. So rectangular is the one you normally see on TV, like Star Sports is their kind of show, or Channel 4, I think, used to show it back in the day. But rectangular is almost where it looks like it's on a badminton court. And then circular is the one where you play in big open fields. And that one originates from like Punjabi. So much less rules, I'll be honest, in the circular one.
I mean, I kind of fell out with sport recently. It might be something I can get myself back into. It sounds like a game that I could get myself involved in.
Scott McDonald, I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about it.
Excellent. So we're going to go a wee bit back in time, Phoebe. We've talked about your football career in terms of playing. So we're going to go back to 2016 now for you. You took up your coaching intern at Laverne in California. That then obviously developed into your internship with the Bills in 2017 and 2018. That must have been an amazing experience for you. That someone who was at that point, you're 6 years, 7 years into looking at the sport, and suddenly you're now interning at the Buffalo Bills. That must have been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it probably was more like 3 years into knowing anything about this sport, because I really didn't start playing until 2012, 5-a-side, 2013, and I think one of the things that I have as a mission in this country is how do we help upskill and get coaches up to a certain standard? Just because when I went to my first internship in Laverne, and that was just 2 weeks kind of going out there, that was like the biggest eye opener. And I would say to anybody that's interested in getting involved in coaching, because I do get a lot of people who are saying, hey, I'd love to coach the NFL. A lot of people would love to coach the NFL. However, have you coached in college? Have you put yourself in situations where you have $0 and every day is a struggle, but you love what you're doing? And so for me, doing that first internship at Laverne was mega, because I was like, yeah, it's only 2 weeks. Rich Wurzel, who is unbelievable, just kind of a champion for a lot of us Brits, essentially, and giving us opportunities. He went to Aberystwyth. He was like, look, you pay for your flight to get out here. You pay for your stuff while you're here, but you can stay on the couch, basically. So doing that was the biggest best decision I could have made. And off the back of that, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to coach now. But I think you have to live that. I think you have to go out there and put yourself out there in order to really know. Because even then, the NFL is so different anyways. College compared to the NFL is different. College is way more recruiting than NFL, for example. And so then to go and earn the opportunity to have an internship with the Bills through the Bill Walsh Diversity Fellowship, that was phenomenal. And I don't pat around the fact that I was not ready at all. Like, I had so much to learn. There was so much I didn't know, terminology, the speed of the game. I was not there to be a bystander. I was there to add value, and I was determined to find a way to add value. And so after 2017, when I left in that training camp, I was like, how do I get myself better? And so I went, literally, I was on my flight. It's just all wild. I was on my flight from Buffalo to Copenhagen because we were having our flag European championships out there, competed in the flag European championships, slept at the airport, flew straight back out to Rhode Island, and did that internship with Bryant University, which is a Div 1 college in Rhode Island. I think I was like the first female to coach in Div 1. And so to be out there I had no money. I got $500. It was like a meal plan, $500, which is what, like $430 maybe pounds to live on for an entire season. Again, lived in my coach's basement, ran to work, didn't have a car. Like, you start to earn that story, and you start to realize that, this is either something you love or this is something that you just want to say you do. And for me, like, again, I just kept falling in love with it. And I kept just being engrossed with the detail and honestly, the sacrifices that a lot of these people were making. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Cause like my head coach from when I was at Bryant has been the head coach at Brown, which is a great school again on the East Coast. The quarterback's assistant I was with is now a coach at the Chargers. So to like see the coaching tree and see where it's gotten to is really quite special.
Yeah. So a point you made there, Phoebe, about obviously you were the first female coach in Div 1. When you were at the Bills, you were one of only 4 female coaches in the whole NFL in general at that point. I mean, how do you feel like female representation in the NFL specifically has changed since 2016?
Hugely, right? So, and I think there's 2 parts to it. I think one, the NFL and Sam Rappaport, who is just a legend, she had created our Women's World Football Games, which is with USA Football, but then created this kind of women's careers forum that runs every year at the Combine. It started with kind of any and everybody, 250 people. Now it's narrowed down to about 40 people. You have to apply. You have to get chosen to be a part of this group. And then at the Combine, you're then kind of put in these breakout rooms with head coaches, scouts, GMs, whatever it is, or whoever it is you're kind of interested in being learning from. And you hope that you get, one of the NFL teams to pick you, essentially. So that's been going on for years, 7 years, I want to say now. And, whether it was myself, Katie Sowers, Jen King, Callie Brownson, like all of us came through that same, Lori Locust, of course, like we all came through that same program together. So like our day one photo is like all of us just at this cool, conference together. And so like there's that piece of it. And then there's also the side to it where it's like, it's not just a box ticking exercise. You have to put the right people for these jobs in these positions, because the NFL life is not easy. The NFL life is not just saying that you're playing for a team. And I remember when I was at that one of the many forums, that was kind of what I fell in love with. Scott Pioli from he was with the Falcons at that time, Kim Bagula, owner of the Bills, Ron Rivera, like all of them were so brutally honest with the fact that they were saying this is not easy. And that's what I wanted. I wanted that challenge. I was like, and I just loved, it wasn't sugarcoating it. It's not like, yeah, I get to wear the NFL badge and I represent so-and-so. It was, this is going to be hard work. This is going to be sacrifice. And I was like, yeah, I want that challenge. I want to be able to say that I can do that. And again, add value to an organization.
Yeah, and I guess one of the follow-ups I maybe have from my perspective is it is that point about representation. If you can see it, you can be it. So obviously with coaching, but in the NFL, I guess initially, when myself and Dan are growing up, from a female perspective, you're seeing maybe female sideline reporters, but that's about it. And then now you're starting to see analysts, commentators, referees. The Panthers Raiders game earlier in the season, I think, was the first one between two female presidents in the NFL. So I guess it just goes to show that whilst obviously the NFL specifically is promoted as a male sport, actually there's so many different roles where females are a part of the game.
I mean, hugely. Look, like there's a lot of females out there that don't get necessarily the recognition that have been doing it. Tracy Perlman has been a part of the NFL for 30 years. Donna Ponte has been a part of the NFL for 20 plus years. And these are women that were game changers early on. Catherine Smith was with the Bills in 2013. Then Katie Sowers and myself came along. You've got women who are strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, scouts. You've got tons of women in these positions. And I think there's this hard kind of balance where as women, as whether like if you're talking about ethnic minorities, like people don't want to be put on pedestals. Yeah. You just want to be great at what you do. So I think it's finding that balance of there's an element we have to celebrate people and bring light to people, because you have to, like you're saying, Gav, if you can see it, you can be it. But then there's an element of, but I don't want to be highlighted. I just want to be able to do my job, because then you have to think too about what does that mean for your organization? Because you're in a sport where it's about we, not me. And if they're like, well, why are you keep doing this? Like, why are they keep, you're separating yourself. And so it's a really fine balance to nail.
Yeah, it's that probably is that important distinction, isn't it? That you could be female, you could be Phoebe Schecter, the first Bills female coach, but actually you also just want to be Phoebe Schecter, the next or the new Bills assistant coach.
Yeah, and that's kind of the line I like to think of, right? It's not about, and whatever any of us do, it's not about being the first. It's making sure that you're not the last, because that's ultimately speaking to your legacy. And when I was in Buffalo, I was super aware that, yes, I was one of the only 3 females that had a season-long internship. And I needed to make sure that, I was doing all the right things so that people could come after me. There were opportunities, doors were open. I had done such a great job that they're like, why wouldn't we have women in this building? So it was great after that. Like Callie Bronson came to Buffalo. And then after that, Sophia Lewin, and now Millie's there. Like that for me is a legacy, because you make such a great impression. You do such a great job that they're like, yeah, let's like, having people that are different to us is only a positive.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the NFL, apart from maybe being on the field playing the sport, every role within an NFL team is available to anybody. It's not as if there's only roles that certain people of different diversities can do. I mean, look at the Ravens now. They got 3 women's coaches within their setup now, which is phenomenal. There's 15 across the league in general. But like you said, we should just be saying, yeah, they're just coaches. I feel we shouldn't be saying, oh, it's women coaches. You're a coach. You say, don't separate yourself. You just want to be on the team as we, not of I'm a female on this team. Look at me. It's like I am just part of this team.
Yeah, I agree completely, and that's what we want. We just want to be looked at like that. I kind of always use the analogy, I guess, of no good soccer team, football team has 11 strikers. right? Like, what good would that be? So you want people that are diverse. You want people who come from different backgrounds, who think differently. It opens and creates room for creativity. A lot of times, for some of these male athletes, they grow up and they might just be growing up with their aunties or their moms or sisters. So, and a lot of times they're the ones that will praise, like, hey, these are the strongest people in my life. These are so, and now you're creating a situation where, okay, I'm a female in this role. Well, actually, a lot of the players feel more comfortable in some situations talking to me. Like maybe they got a question they don't want to go to their positional coach about, so they'll come to me as an assistant coach. You look at, I don't know who, if you've watched Hard Knocks, Jen King, a terrific example. She is someone who's a hustler. She's been doing it since, I mean, I can't even think of how long it's been now, but she did college. She was at the Panthers. She's gone to the Commanders. Now she's with the Bears. I just think these are the things you want. These are the people you want that are just really great at what they do, and they can relate with the players, and you can make them feel comfortable, because you're going to get the most out of somebody when they feel comfortable, when they're able to be their authentic selves.
Yeah, excellent. Right, so going forward a bit in 2020, you started working with Sky and doing a bit with Sky. Now you're a mainstay in the coverage. Now you're there every week for a ridiculous amount of hours. It must be amazing now, just basically to be able to talk about a sport that you love for your job.
Yeah, it's super cool. Like, I am really, really fortunate. I love being part of a team, and that's for me what Sky is. When it's Neil, Jason, and I, in between, like when you guys don't see us, we're chatting about the game. We're trying to figure out what that story is. Who are they attacking? We're having these conversations, and I love that kind of working together, bouncing off each other. Then you bring in Dominic in, and he just adds a totally different dimension to us, but we have this great chemistry still. It's great. Like, we are so fortunate to have such just a nice feel. Last night working with Hannah Wilkes again. I mean, she's a superhero. She's literally got her baby there. She's feeding her baby in between commercial breaks. I'm like, women are so amazing. It's so cool. We're all so supportive of each other.
Yeah, I mean, the team you've got there, I mean, across the year, it changed up. So you've seen Greg on last night, which it was good to see as well. But people like, I mean, I'm a massive Jeff Reinbold fan. I just love Jeff. I've loved him back to NFL Europe days when he was coaching. I done the chain crew for the NFL Europe for the Claymores, and Jeff was always on the sideline interacting with the crowd and stuff. I love Jeff, and he just talks so much good football. He must be such a good laugh to be around. But the whole team, it looks just like an amazing team to work as part of.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's so funny. Like, I love, you have, as everyone does, you have WhatsApp groups, and Jeff kills me in these WhatsApp groups. He's so funny. He's just, I'm so excited to see him again. It's, he's doing a great job at Hawaii. And so obviously that has to take priority for sure. But whenever he comes back, it's like we've never left each other. And I think that's a sign of a really good team, really great chemistry. And we just love what we do. We're all so passionate about the sport here. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, all of us come from a perspective of growing the game, and, whether it's Neil's son, George, who's coaching tight ends at the NFL Academy, obviously Jason's history in this country, myself, Hannah, who's been, studying the NFL for years now, and Jeff, of course. Like, we all have such a investment and interest in building the game here.
Yeah. And this year, I've obviously seen Jason and Ossie have started doing their podcast this year, and you've been part of that. That must be such a good, fun environment to be part of with the two of them. They just look like such a good laugh.
They're so great. And I mean, it was so cool the other week for Ossie to get the first ever, acknowledgement at Ring of Honor. I mean, to be inducted into that it just is a testament to who he is. I mean, he's been phenomenal, like creating NFL Africa. He's got a big part to do with getting some of those athletes over to the NFL Academy. I always steal the line from him, because he says, talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. And, he's someone that's a product of all of that. So I feel like everyone is amazing, right? Like, everyone bounces off each other so well. And, they've all kind of got their own little niche things, and it all works and fits in. And we're all trying to kind of give everybody what they want ultimately. Like, hey, if you want super nerdy stuff, you can go here. If you're brand new to the sport, you can come here. And I think that's the balance we're still trying to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, we done a bit of on socials like when they announced that we're going to do the Ring of Honor thing, and Ossie was one of the unanimous choices on social media. People that 100% deserves to be in there, and to be essentially the first was well deserved recognition for him. Excellent. So we actually leads us on quite nicely talking about Ossie and NFL African and International. So last weekend we had this season's kind of London game 2 of the season. The sport is continuing to grow worldwide, obviously with the game in Brazil this year, which was a new one. Roger kind of get quoted the other day saying he wants 8 games and up to 16 international games going forward. But how do you see the growth of the sport across the world, Phoebe, in terms of the NFL games is moving forward?
Yeah, I steal it from Neil. He calls it like the Formula One version of this. And that's what I see it as. I think that everybody has an opportunity to have the sport in their backyard, right? Like, I love when it's in London because obviously we're here. I get to be around it, but it's really cool to see how London puts their spin on it. And then you go out to Germany and that's totally different. And like every single country you go to, it makes it theirs. And it's great for the players and the teams that get to go across as well. And obviously a great excuse for people to travel to these places. Next year, you've got Madrid having a game there. I just think this is going to continue to grow and get bigger and better. And it's just a really great time to be a part of the NFL, honestly.
Yeah. I'm going to get the answer out your mouth here with this question first, though. So where do you see it going in the future apart from Ireland? Because we all know the Steelers are playing in Ireland at some point in the next couple of years, but where else do you see the game going?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great options. We even saw they were thinking about Australia at one point. There's an NFL office out there. So a lot of times it's who's able to support that. You do need to have boots on the ground, essentially. Yeah. But I wouldn't put it past a France or a Italy or, imagine the Italian food that we would be eating, but it's a great taste of these countries, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. And I guess that's a really interesting point you made there around, almost the Formula One aspect. So I guess Dan and I, we're both from this generation where we're very, we came into the sport not necessarily through the NFL, but actually through NFL Europe. So we actually kind of, I guess, have, maybe it's just a nostalgic vision in our heads of, oh, well, could there be a London team or even a European division and you have a Frankfurt or a Rhine-Fire actually coming back to and be a part of the NFL. But from your perspective, do you think the direction is to eventually have a franchise here, or is it more about actually just growing the game globally and having that sort of tour aspect to it?
I think I kind of like the idea of it just being, hey, you've got 16 away games eventually, right? Or international games. I think that's a nicer situation in a lot of ways. I don't think we need a franchise here because also one of the things that, you brought up NFL Europe, like one of the things that we love is that everyone has a different story about the team they love. So if you only have one team here in London, like what happens to all the fans of all the other teams? Does that mean you convert? Does that mean, how does that work? Whereas here you might have a chance of actually seeing your team playing in the UK. I think there's also just so many logistical kind of situations around that. In order to get a team over here, I think there was a rugby team in Canada that kind of trialed that. Yeah, and I don't think it was easy. Like you got to think on like, where do you host these games? Like where is big enough? Then you've got to think about all the families because you're not just bringing over 53 players, you're bringing over their whole families. Then you've got the coaching staff. How does that work? Because you may not have a job after a year from now. Do you have your whole family move to another country? And then the staff, I mean, organizations are like 500 people deep plus all their families.
Absolutely. I think you're right. There's so many different considerations. You even think about things like actually the tax situation, because actually, if you're in the UK for more than 6 months and a day of the year, you need to pay tax here. You can't just, you need to get out of the country, essentially. There's also even the exchange rate. You're not, they talked about closer to home for the NFL playing in Canada, but actually, times where there's big differences in Canadian money against the US dollar. So that's a big factor. And then you're right. I'm thinking about some of the sports like we have in rugby, we have the URC, and actually we have South African teams playing Welsh and Scottish and Irish teams, and they need to come and almost play a mini tour and then go back, and it's a long journey, and home advantage becomes massive in these ties. I mean, we talk about teams going from East Coast to West Coast, and yeah, there's obviously an impact in the London games, but actually both teams are usually doing it, so it kind of offsets. But if you actually then having one team in the UK or elsewhere going across an ocean every couple of months, then it's going to have a big knock on to that home advantage.
Yeah, I think the opportunity went when Shahid Khan tried to buy Wembley. I think that was the opportunity. The Jags weren't doing very well at that point. And I think if he had got Wembley, I think they're doing an opportunity if he would have moved the Jags. But the Jags started getting successful, never got Wembley, and now they're spending $1 billion building their own stadium in Jacksonville. So that one's been Neil's been putting that coffin. But I think, yeah, I agree with Phoebe. I don't think we're going to see a franchise going forward. I mean, I've seen the Cowboys once, 2014. We must be due to come back. Hopefully not next season if we keep playing the way we're playing, to be fair, though. Last season we were actually playing quite well. So no, so you mentioned a few cities over there. Germany, the EFL, they're getting crowds of 30,000, like finals and stuff like that. The Germany is massive, so there's been games over there, but yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it. I think even the Steelers are pushing for Ireland now, which shows you if a team's pushing for it, then it's going to happen. So that'll be a close one. I think I'd rather trip to Dublin than I would to London, to be fair. I think we'll keep that one, Gav. Steelers against the
to London than you would to Govan, Dan.
I know, I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that came from. Let's move on to talk about the current NFL season. And just a wee quick, Phoebe, you talk about this in your day job, so we won't ask you to talk too much about the actual current season. But also, we're now completed 6 weeks, obviously, the game tonight or so. But how do you think the season in general is shaping up so far?
I think it's crazy. I think week 5 was crazy. I think week 6 has some kind of madness in it as well. Scores going ways that you just wouldn't anticipate, perhaps. But I think it's great to see. Like, I just love watching this sport, and I love kind of watching how coaches are making more with less and finding ways to be successful at the end of the day.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, it's is there anybody kind of players or teams that have kind of impressed you this season that you maybe weren't expecting a lot from?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would be hard pressed to not talk about the Commanders and Jaden Daniels and what they're doing. I mean, even last night's game, that was a big game against a really big defense in terms of the Ravens, but his composure, his ability to still, in short periods of time, move the ball down the field. I just really think that he's something special. And I like what Cliff Kingsbury's done there. I like how the Commanders have kind of thought outside the box in terms of recreating their organization and pulling from other sports. I think that's just a really creative way of thinking.
Yeah, and in terms of apart from the Cowboys, so I'll take that one out of your mouth. Who's underperforming this year? Who are you kind of disappointed by this season so far?
I probably have a couple of disappointments, unfortunately. I mean, the Cowboys, that was a tough game last night. So I think the Jaguars, this is not looking great for them either. And then I think Miami, the Dolphins are another team who were, big threats last year and, full speed ahead, thinking you could make playoffs again. And yes, you lose Tua, but I think ultimately you have to, you look at all these other coaches, whether it was Stefanski when they brought Flacco in or, anyone else, essentially, you find ways to adjust your playbook and make it suit the people that you have. And, Tua is definitely a timing quarterback. He's definitely a guy that throws with anticipation. And so when you bring in Snoop Huntley and you keep trying to do the same thing and expect a different result, it's a challenge, I think, ultimately.
So for those three teams that you mentioned there, what you're basically saying is don't pay your quarterback.
Yeah, that was that.
Gav, you wanted to ask?
Yeah, no, I did. I guess maybe one question just before I can ask my specific follow-on is Phoebe. I think if I recall correctly, your pre-season pick for the Super Bowl was the Bengals. Are you wanting a do-over, or do you think after last night's game, we're recording on Monday, that they're back in the hunt?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a tricky one. Like, I don't believe in their defense. I thought that they not this game yesterday, but the week before, I felt like their defense had actually stepped up big time. I believe in Joe Burrow. I believe in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I feel like they are actually phenomenal still. And the way and the speed that they put up points is incredible. I think that it's tough. If you look at most of the games that they lost, it was all ones that they could have won. And I felt like last week's game was a coaching decision. Why you're in overtime, you're running the ball. It's the first time your kicker's going out there. You try and kick this field goal. For me, it doesn't make sense. And they could have easily have won that game. And it could have, built on that trajectory. We would have been talking about a team that's now, got 3 wins on the board as opposed to 2. And so that's the kind of, NFL.
I guess that's the beauty of the NFL as well, is that variance in the schedules as well. Because if you look at the caliber of some of those losses, so we're talking about now losses to, of course, the Ravens, the game you're talking about, but also week 2, the Chiefs, a game that actually they were in a position to win again on the road. So as you go through the weeks and hopefully you start to get a feeling for who these teams are. I guess that kind of leads me on to the other question I wanted to ask is, there's been a big push really to shrink pre-season and pre-season activities over the years. And do you think that is factoring into, I guess, the NFL has always been a parity-driven league, but is that actually increasing that because teams are actually spending, the first month of a season almost figuring out their identity in some cases?
I think that's always going to be the case, is the first kind of 4 weeks are when teams are figuring out who they are. I think the preseason is a funny one because ultimately you're not really playing your starters for much anyways. So it doesn't matter if you add in another preseason game, you're still going to give your starters maybe a little bit more experience just in terms of rep count, but you're going to pull them because really preseason is about who are the guys that are on the cusp. Are we going to bring them up? And so that's where I think you really get to get some game film of them. I don't know if it makes a difference for your starters. If you know who your starters are, you're probably, pretty secure in what they can offer you. So yeah, preseason's kind of a funny one. Like it's a necessary evil in a lot of ways. Like you want to get those done, but nothing for me tells you anything until you're in a real life game and it's week 1 and that's what speaks the loudest, I would say.
Yeah, a running thing that we have on the podcast, Phoebe, is about the Bills in their Super Bowl window. We had this going all last season. We keep it going this year. I will put my hands up and say I picked Josh Allen to be my MVP of the league this season. He's doing okay so far. We'll see how that goes. But the Bills Super Bowl window, is it open? Is it closed? Is it slightly ajar? Where do you think the Bills are sitting at the moment?
Man, they're week in and week out. This is kind of who they are. They live in this world. I love the Bills. They're my people. Josh Allen's terrific. He is just a superstar. I think you always, I know Joe Burrow said it. If he's there, you've always got a chance. But I think Josh Allen, you've always got a chance if you've got Josh Allen there. I think the kind of interesting thing is when you watch him, I mean, I know they've had a tough couple weeks, Texans, Ravens before that. But if you watch Josh Allen, if you didn't have Patrick Mahomes in the league, Josh Allen would be the guy that we're all talking about. Yeah. Lamar definitely for sure. But talking about some of the magic that Allen does, I think it's just unfortunate that some of our best quarterbacks are all in the AFC right now. Whether you are talking about Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, we have some serious dudes playing in the AFC.
Yeah. I think it's quite interesting, just to fall back off that, something that Jaden Daniels was asked last week was about the comparison between him and Lamar Jackson. But the quarterbacks that you mentioned, there's obviously Lamar, Josh Allen, and Pat Mahomes. In the past NFL quarterbacks, they've kind of fit a mold of the same player, but the 3 of them are 3 completely different players who are playing at the elite level. It's not as if there's a one mold fits all to make that elite quarterback. You've got 3 of those who are completely different players.
I know, and that's what makes it so cool to see, because they all excite you in different ways, and watching them play is so cool. You watch Lamar Jackson, and I believe he's a superhero. He could literally do anything. His running ability, Derrick Henry just makes him look even more like a dude. Josh Allen, I think they're kind of let down a little bit by so many injuries on their defense, but still, you watch that game again against the Ravens, rolling out, throws that ball downfield on the sideline. He does make magic happen. And then Mahomes right now. They're not winning in the best ways. They're kind of just barely getting by, but Mahomes is still the leader of that. And Mahomes is still the one that's finding ways to get you that win with very few receivers left.
Yeah, without getting into too much detail of specific games, I'm only going to ask you this question because it's the Bills. The decisions to throw 3 plays at the end of the game last week, what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, I don't know if I would necessarily have gone with that. But you don't know what that conversations are. The Bills also have somebody there who's got, you're backed up anyway, so it's not even a nice position for you to be in. Maybe you're concerned. You've got someone that's helping you from a stats and analytics perspective, saying, hey, it says this is what we should be doing in these situations with the clock at this time. You just don't know what any of those communications are that are happening. I think it's easy in hindsight to be like, what are we doing there, guys? But that's why we're on the couch and they're on the field.
as the Seahawks love a bit of hindsight, they should have run it. But I think, Gav, it was you actually made the point where talking about those specific 3 plays, that throwing the ball would actually have taken more time off the clock than running it because there was 3 timeouts on the other side. So they'd ran it at the time when they're throwing the ball actually would have ran more time off the clock. So
I think that's exactly it. I mean, there is the point where I think they had about 30 seconds left on the clock, but the Texans had all their timeouts. So yes, if you run the ball, if you just go up the gut, you maybe get them to burn a timeout, but you're only taking a couple of seconds off the clock. Whereas, if you drop back, you roll out, and we actually saw it in the flag finals this year with the Hornets against the Hurricanes. They would actually just throw deep balls just to take like extra seconds off the clock. It's almost a little bit like a punt. Just hang the ball up there, run some time off, and then obviously, especially if you're just trying to burn time, throw it out of bounds, keep it safe. But I think that was the thinking. It very nearly paid off. You have to think that was, I think, a 59-yard field goal that won it or thereabouts. So it was no chip shot. But yeah. This is a Monday morning quarterback.
Always the way.
Now you're mentioning the Hornets leads us on nicely then to talk about. Let's go back to flag football again. Phoebe, we mentioned earlier on we'd come back to the World. So obviously just come back from the World, just back, I say, a month or so ago. So finish up at 7th against Japan at the Worlds. Like, thinking now you've had a month or so to reflect on the Worlds and the flag. How do you think of it now reflecting back?
I mean, the event was great. Like, I think that it's phenomenal to have 53 countries or 53 teams represented from multiple different countries there. It's a huge community. For me, it feels like a big reunion for, seeing everybody, which I love. If you look back and reflect on performance of us, I'm quite critical. I have quite high expectations. I think the whole team did going into it. We should have won the game against Japan. It's not really a conversation. It's just what it is. Should have then won the game against Canada. And so, you go from, we should have been playing for 3rd or 4th to you're just trying to survive and beat Italy for 7th. And so from that standpoint, it's not, for me, it's not good enough, but that's because I'm a competitor and I know that we have so much more to us. And I think that, as an organization, I guess I go back to my initial point, right? Like, we all need to find ways to self-scout and develop and do more, because ultimately, if we're saying that we are going to be an Olympic sport, all of us, players, coaches, staff, need to be operating at that level. And so it's a mindset for me of, well, what are we doing now? Because we have World Games next summer. And, I'm very fortunate that we made it into the World Games, but that hard work started pretty much in September, right? Have the rest of August off. But now everyone's mindset should be, how am I getting ready for World Games in China? What are our player pathways? Kenny Bello is the head of our youth development program, right? He runs all of Youth GB. And how do we incorporate some of those kids, our 17U girls, what are some of the young ones from 15U that are coming all the way up? You start to look at, they've recruited in some of, we've got like our Bears girls flags, which is for secondary school, Jets as well. They're starting to pull people in from that. We should be looking from other sports. We should be we should be doing every single thing possible to make sure that when we go to World Games that we can really feel good about ourselves and stamp our names on that map. And, people doubted us coming into the World Championships this summer, and, we kind of let them, prove them right in a lot of ways, right? Where we let ourselves down ultimately. And again, I'm a competitor. I know my team are competitive, so we're always going to want to be doing better.
Yeah. Follow on question I want to ask. I guess I spent a lot of that week at the end of August watching the tournament. I mean, there were some really fantastic games. I think actually all the streams are still available. The Panama game where you clinched the group was superb. The Japan game really did went down to the wire. I think if I remember correctly, you had a chance in a kind of a tip drill type situation. The ball didn't fall that way. We are talking your classic game of inches there in terms of how that goes. I think Japan finished third. It's these small differences that make everything. But I guess the big takeaway for me is actually what we're seeing from that World Championship certainly for both the Great Britain teams, but actually for the tournament as a whole is just how much this has grown. It is an event. It is a spectacle. And true, in sort of northern Finland, it's not necessarily the best place for sort of neutral spectators to come to, but you've got the 6 pitches, you've got the live feeds, you've got the stadiums, and I guess that's a long-winded way of saying presentation is everything. And are we now seeing a scenario where flag is not just for playing in the park and perhaps that entry level to football, but it's actually becoming a true alternative to the kitted game that we all know?
Yeah, I guess there's a few things off of that, and I'll kind of start back. I think, like, to your first initial point, I think flag football is a game where, and kind of going back to your like third, fourth place conversation, like flag football is a game where there's very like small margin for error, right? You have to catch the ball every single opportunity, because that's the difference of, having 10 yards or 5 yards or whatever that looks like. It's very small windows that you're working in. And so there's an element of like, we just don't have room for this. And then when you look at the whole presentation, IFAF have done a wonderful job. The NFL have done a wonderful job. The NBC just did the global rise of flag football. Like, it is on a huge, huge platform right now. And we're very fortunate to have that platform, because we've been working at this for a super long time. And so now it's finally like, oh, people are seeing this. I don't think that flag has to be, I think that flag and tackle can live like simultaneously. And I think that they can help one another. There's people that, some of our 17U boys that play, some of those boys started with flag, maybe play a little bit of tackle, but actually they've been called up to the academy because of what they've been doing at flag. So now they're in the NFL academy. And so for me, I think that there still is this, I don't know what the right word is, to be honest. I need more sleep for that. But there still is this kind of friction between contact and flag. And I don't really understand it as someone who's played both sports for a long time now. They only benefit each other. I mean, if we look at the UK game, what are the things that we're always going to complain about? Oh, catch the football. Defensively, break that up. Like, well, what is flag? Flag is catching, throwing, defensive back movements. Like, it's skill positions. And so those skill positions need to get a lot better in this country as an overall statement. So play as much flag as possible. Plus, if you're a receiver, you're guaranteeing yourself way more opportunities to be catching the ball. You might play on an 11-a-side field and game, and you may never touch the ball in a game. But work on your routes, work on the details of what you do, and take pride in that. And I think flag really helps that. And you might get contact players out of it. You just never know. But it's a great entry point into the sport to help somebody to remove some of the barriers that tackle offers.
Yeah. I think as an ex-receiver at flag, it's like you said there, when you're playing wide receiver and tackle, you're maybe blocking on plays, or you maybe in flag you're running a route every single play. So it does something like the play might not be developed to go towards you, but there's only 3 of you. So if they took cover, it is coming your way. So you need to make sure you're on the ball, running your route every single play. And it's like you said, it's a good way for especially those positions to play, skill positions to increase the level of practice and reps by still playing competitively at the same time. So yeah, I mean that's a great point you make there, Phoebe. Moving forward, obviously we mentioned about the flag moving to the Olympics. We all know it's coming. It's in 2028 now, but you're obviously an ambassador for the sport. Like, how big a deal really is this?
It's bigger than I think any of us can ever fully imagine. I mean, I'm sure you guys watched the opening or closing ceremonies for Paris this past year, and you think potentially you could be there in 2028 in LA. You know, they're going to do things bigger and better than ever before. Obviously, flag football being a sport that's highly played in the US as well. I just think that this is such a huge opportunity to highlight some of our athletes around the world. Even from an NFL perspective, what does that look like from a player's perspective? And not just talking about Team USA. I mean, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, for example. He's German. He can play for the German national team. You've got incredible athletes who have a really great shot. And it's, naturally also it offers funding. It helps you bring funding into flag. It helps grow the sport on a huge scale. It benefits everybody ultimately.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was just actually going to bring that point. We've spoke to Izzy, Ollie and Liam from Team GB, and we spoke to Izzy for Team USA, and funding was one of the main things we talked about, especially in the UK. Like, it's basically as an elite level sport that's not getting elite level funding, and going to the Olympics hopefully will bring in a level of funding that will allow the sport to grow, not just for these Olympics, but going forward, because at the end of the day, funding is key to making these things and having a legacy in these sports.
Yeah, and it also, there's some incredibly talented athletes that we have in the UK who just can't afford to play. They can't afford the subs. They can't afford the trains. They can't afford any of that. And so that's not for us to say, oh, well, too bad then next. Like, that's not where we need to be. We need to be in a place of, hey, if you can't afford that, same for coaching. If you can't afford that, well, let us help you. Let us bring you into this sport, because there's going to be more and more of those situations. And, as someone that's been paying subs and paying for a lot of stuff for a long time from a playing perspective, flag, tackle, coaching, all 3 of those elements cost a lot of money. And, it's got to change for people, especially young people. We can't be asking our 17, 18-year-olds to be funding all of this. They literally just can't afford it a lot of times. So we've got to be considerate of those, considerate of our venues where we're hosting things. It's not easy for people from like the city to be able to get to the middle of nowhere in Liverpool. So I just think there's a lot of like holistic considerations around the growth of this sport and the development of the people from coaching, staffing, players that need to be considered.
Excellent. One last question I want to ask you about flag. I wasn't really going to mention it, but you brought up some players, so I'm going to throw it into you. So obviously you mentioned Amon-Ra there. Obviously, when the announcement came out, there was a lot of chat from the NFL. NFL didn't know what flag football was until the Olympics were interested by the looks of it. But there's also a lot of players have put their head above the parapet, and there's a lot of things in the NFL. And it's obviously came out now in how the American flag quarterbacks came out and said, well, this is our sport. What's your thoughts on this whole, the NFL think they can come in and take over the American flag team?
I think that, and I love Hoosh, so I think that I think there's an element of when we're looking at what's going to happen in the future. The NFL and IFAF, we all work together, right? We're the same. And I think that's the first starting point. We can't be looking at it like it's different. That's not to say that there will not be trials and ways to scout and, make sure the right talent is playing. That's not saying that anybody's getting kicked out. That's not saying that people aren't getting kicked out, right? It's about earning your spot at the end of the day. And so the best people to represent their countries are going to be the ones that are ultimately chosen for the team by the coaches. And they're the ones that make those decisions. So, Hoosh is an incredible quarterback. He's an incredible athlete, like just electric to watch. And so, if he keeps doing what he's doing, then I have no doubt that he'll be there.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily a point against him in general. Just like seems to be, and the conversations we've had. Because obviously, you mentioned Amon-Ra with German. They've got players that could come and play for Team GB. But the general consensus with the flag players we've spoken to is like, see if there's trials, come and earn your spot in the team, and you're fine like that. I think it's more the initial not coming from in particular, was that the people assumed it was going to be like the NBA, where the superstars were just going to go and play at the Olympics. I think that kind of impression that came out was wrong, but that kind of got a lot of people's backs up, which is when we've seen that interview from Hoosh, and that's why we got it up. But they all seem to say, like, come to trials. If you come to trials and you show up when you play, then you're on the team. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'd expect it in the UK. Like, we're going to get track stars. We're going to get netball, volleyball, basketball. Like, everybody's position is up for contention, and that's what I want. That's what we should all want, because ultimately, you want the most competitive team possible out on the field representing your country. And I think that's for all of us to have a deep thought about, am I going to be in a position, or am I doing the right things to put myself in a position to be the most successful, to be the most competitive, to be in the best shape of my life, to be an Olympic athlete? Because that has to be the absolute foundation for everything we're thinking, doing, believing, going forwards in your daily life. And so the sacrifices, they start now. The sacrifices don't start 6 months from the Olympics or a year from the Olympics. You have to be looking at a 4-year plan. What am I doing? Prehab, rehab, whatever, to put myself and invest in yourself, invest in, and just getting yourself to the best position possible.
Yeah. We've recently seen that you've recently hung up your kitted helmet and took retirement from that sport. But thinking forward, is Phoebe Schecter's name in the hat for going to LA? You're going to be hanging around the flag for the next 4 years?
Yeah. So I think.
I don't want to put you on the spot. I probably shouldn't put you on the spot with that question, but
I hope that somebody beats me for my position. I would love that. I would love for a young person or someone from another sport come in, kick my butt at my position. Like, I want competition. I want to earn it, whatever that looks like. I would want to also, I want to be coaching too, right? I would love to coach a men's team. I would love to be doing that. And I think we all have to be considerate of the fact that there's probably only going to be 8-10 teams that are going to the Olympics. It's not a free-for-all. It's not everybody who plays the sport gets to go. You're looking at a very small sample size of countries that are going to be represented at the Olympics. And whether I'm playing, whether I'm coaching, I want to be the best. I want to be amongst the best of the best that make it out there.
Perfect. Great. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh no. I love it. I'm very honest. I think we found that,
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate that.
So I think I guess LA is in some ways the future. It's a very quickly approaching future, but we kind of move from 3-4 years time to, I guess, the immediate future, which is the women's flag football league actually kicks off this weekend. We obviously mentioned before that the season itself will culminate in March 25 in Ravenscraig, not far from your grand's home. But I guess what are your thoughts kind of heading into the UK season, Phoebe?
I'm excited to be with the Birmingham Lions. We've started our kind of brand new team again, which is super cool, bringing it back full circle for myself. I think, the game is getting more and more competitive. Teams are getting more and more competitive. That's ultimately what we all want. I think it's a very long season. I think it's a very cold season. I would really like to do this in the summertime. I would prefer to not be running around in the cold, wet rain in November and December. But hopefully that changes in the future.
And I think it's really exciting to see the growth in the women's game that's taken place over the last few years. Because I think my count is 17 teams in the league this year over 2 conferences, which I think outstrips certainly the men's league when it went to a national UK-wide competition. It was probably in the low double digits. Now it's obviously getting up into 40, 50 teams and two tiers. But the league's grown substantially. I guess what's your thoughts in terms of the growth of the sport for women?
I think the growth is great. I think it can be better. I think that if we had fewer barriers to participation in this league and fewer kind of high standards around it, I think that would be more inviting for teams to be a part of it. I mean, we're a sport that's still in its infancy. So we should be making sure that everybody has a chance to be playing this sport. I think that that still needs some work. I think that still needs to be evaluated. I think the process in which, I don't know if y'all use Playways. I can't be using that platform anymore. That is the worst thing I've ever used in my life. So even down to that, like that's a barrier to participation for me. So I just think that we need to find ways to be way more inclusive and allow people to, hey, you maybe didn't know about this sport until you hear this podcast. Well, you can't join the league now. So now you've got to wait a whole year. So that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. And I get it. Like you gotta create structure. You've got to create, but allow players to join. Allow, you know what I'm saying? So for me, I'm like men's, women's. There's got to be ways that we are way more inclusive. That, you know, in London, you can show up at a league on a Monday night, pay a tenner. Let's go. Like we need more opportunities to play this sport, because for women right now, it is only going on in these cold months from November through March. But when else is there a women's league?
Yeah, and it's a tough sell. I think because it's we obviously talked about diversity in the sport, but actually in this instance, about diversifying your approach, because absolutely we have the GB lines, we have the elite level, we have the national competition. But for some people, as much as I said, we're moving away from it being a park sport, it should still be an entry level. The same way that you've guys get together after work and they play five-a-side football. Why can't flag be that? How can we give opportunities at every level for the game to go?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Like I've always said, flag is a sport that's available to everyone, but not available to everyone. Everybody can play flag. Everybody can take up flag and try it, but like you say, Phoebe, it's not always available for these people. So it's something, definitely going forward. That 100% agree with you on that. Well, Phoebe, we've kept you long enough. Thanks very much for your time today. We've really appreciated chatting to you. It's been great to get your perspective on all things American football, not just your Sunday job of speaking about the NFL.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it, and thanks for letting me just rant a lot.
Yeah, we don't have to. We've not got any censors at Sky Sports. You can just come on here and rant, do whatever you want to say.
Perfect.
For everyone that's been watching or listening to this episode of the Special Crew, thanks very much. We will be back very soon with another couple of episodes of the Special Crew we've got lined up. Keep an eye on the socials and we will reveal our up-and-coming guests. There is another one coming this week that we were recording that will drop in a couple of weeks' time. But keep an eye on the socials. We'll keep you updated. Subscribe, like, follow everything that we've got on your podcast and you'll find out what's coming next. Thanks very much.
Thanks all.